Looking live at Parliament Hill, Prime Minister Carney is meeting with his cabinet later this morning. His first time to huddle with his inner circle since wrapping the G7 summit. It's also crunch time for the government before the House rises for the summer. And with me now is Tom Mulcair, CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader. Good morning, Tom.
Good to be with you, Renee.
Now, the Prime Minister will be in the House of Commons for the first time today since the G7 meeting. What can we expect?
I'm going to expect everybody trying to find out a little bit more about what happened with Trump and what happened during the meeting. There's a 30-day period that they've given themselves. That's a bit of a breather for Carney, who's got a very busy schedule in the upcoming weeks. He doesn't get a summer break when everybody else in Parliament goes off. He's heading to Europe to work with our NATO partners and to establish a much stronger relationship with the European Union, both key components of what he's promised to accomplish. So his cabinet is going to be given their marching orders, and this is one of the most remarkable things about Carney. This guy is delivering. He took on the issues that he had promised to take on. He said he is going to get legislation through immediately to facilitate big development projects across the country, and he's doing it. And the way he did it is interesting. Justin Trudeau made a deal with the NDP, got in lockstep with them. Carney was having nothing to do with that. And in fact, the NDP was clearly signaling they needed to build back their role independently of the Liberals. So what he's done is he's pushed this legislation forward. And lo and behold, it was Danielle Smith of Alberta who pushed hard, saying this has got to get through, basically signaling to the Conservatives, recreation is over. You're not shutting down Parliament. We need this stuff to move forward. And Carney is able, in that case, to start governing as if he had a de facto majority. He's going to behave as someone who wants to get the things done that Canadians have asked him to get done. He might be a few seats shy of that majority for real, Renee, but I think that he's proving to all Canadians that he means what he said and he's getting it done.
The major projects bill, C5, one of the final priorities on the docket. What will you be watching for here?
I want to see who Mr. Carney taps to take care of the crucial and unavoidable and constitutionally important issue of Indigenous rights. There are inherent rights that have to be respected. There are treaty rights that have to be respected. Doug Ford is an ally of Mark Carney, but he can be a little rough around the edges. His very blunt statements with regard to First Nations, for example, are being called racist by very credible First Nations leaders. So he's got to be super careful that Doug Ford doesn't paint him with the wrong brush. He's got all of this stuff under control. He knows that this is an obligation that he's got to deal with, and he's got to deal with it carefully. But what he is trying to do is shorten the time span for getting things approved, because they can drag on, making sure that there's one approval process. I did that when I was Quebec's environment minister. We said from now on, for certain projects, the feds and the province are just going to look at it together. And it made smoother sailing along the way. And this is exactly the type of thing that Carney wants to get accomplished. But you can't take shortcuts on Native rights. You can't take shortcuts on treaty rights. The tricky part here is that I'm a lawyer. I don't talk against my profession, but I will note with interest that some lawyers have made it their business to stretch out these issues as much as possible. Again, they're in full respect of Canada's international obligations under the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, for example. Carney is trying to see if there is not a way, while respecting those rights, to at least ensure that things can move along apace. And that's the biggest challenge he's going to be facing. If he doesn't get that right, then everything else could fall apart.
All right, and so they'll have a lot to do before Parliament breaks for the summer. We'll see if that passes before that happens. We will have to leave it there. Tom, thank you very much. As always, that is Tom Mulcair, CTV News political commentator and former NDP leader.